Today is day 3 in our Novena to Our Lady of Lourdes. Now today we are going to follow up on yesterday's account. Yesterday we spoke about the second apparition and the third apparition. And in the third apparition on Thursday, February 18th, 1858, Our Lady asked St. Bernadette to come for a fortnight. Now a fortnight refers to 14 nights or 2 weeks. So, due to peer pressure of the two ladies that were there present and Bernadette's mother, Louise, the mother gave in and said that Bernadette could go for the fortnight. So, we have then the 3 apparitions, the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th apparitions that we're going to look at today that happened on Friday, February 19th, Saturday, February 20th, and Sunday, February 21st in the year 1858. So let us begin then. Bishop Lawrence from the Ecclesiastical Commission left this extremely brief summary. Now I'm reading here from the book Saint Bernadette Soubirous by Abbé Francois Trochu, and this is published by Tan Books. And regarding the events of this fortnight, the Ecclesiastical Commission charged by Bishop Lawrence with a first inquiry left only this extremely brief summary. Bernadette was faithful to her appointment. She went most punctually to the grotto for a fortnight. She always obtained the same favors there, except on 2 days when the apparition did not appear. But from now on she was accompanied by an ever-increasing crowd, and when she had the happiness of seeing the vision, she forgot everything. She no longer noticed what was taking place around her. She was entirely absorbed. Bernadette usually saw the vision in the opening mentioned above, sometimes in a winding passage of the grotto further within, always in white, with a blue sash and an enchantingly beautiful face. All right, well, let's take a look then at this 4th apparition. And Abbé Trochu writes this. On the morning of February 19th, Friday, along with Madame Millet, at whose house she had spent the night, Bernadette had heard the first Mass. The weather was bitterly cold, and her temporary guardian had placed a small black hood over the child's white cape. At the dungeon, the mother was waiting for her Bernadette to return from church, fully resolved to accompany her in future to Massabielle as long as was necessary. And standing by the door ready to follow them were a few other women, among them Joseph Hureau, the wife of Barang, the shoemaker. And at daybreak they made their way into the Rue de Baou, now known as the Rue de la Grotte. As agreed, they tapped on Aunt Bernard's window, and she appeared holding her hand the child of Mary's candle belonging to Aunt Lucille, for you certainly need some blessed object down there. And she accompanied them as well. Bernadette bounded down to the grotto, and she had this blessed candle. And so we have the beginning of the use of candles at Lourdes. And so she lit the candle, held it in her left hand, and with the right she was already telling her beads. And at the 3rd Hail Mary she entered into ecstasy. Now Joseph Barang reported this. As soon as the apparition appeared, her smile became lovely, and her countenance changed. She gave a greeting with her hand and head. It was a delight to see her. It was as if she had done nothing else all her life but learn to bow. Well, Aunt Bernard also noticed Bernadette's bows and smiles, and from time to time, a very slight movement of the lips, and to see her face like that brought tears to your eyes, she said. "How lovely she is like that," cried one of them. "She's dying," exclaimed another. "Ah, poor little thing, what a wretch I am," sobbed Aunt Bernard, while Louise Soubirous, Bernadette's mother, uttered a fervent entreaty to the Lord of life and death, "My God, I implore you, don't take my child away from me." Now, at the end of about a half hour, the vision ceased, and Bernadette sank into her mother's arms. And Abbé Trochu mentions that it was not because Bernadette was exhausted. In fact, she was usually very energized after the apparitions, but rather it was that she had gone from this place of bright sunshine into a very dark place, coming back into the reality of the world around her. And it was that, accompanied by the fact that she would seem to be blinded temporarily after she came out of the brightness of her ecstasy, and she would be disoriented and grasp for someone to hold on to, and so she sank into her mother's arms. And this is what she had to say about this fourth apparition. On the way back, Bernadette revealed how at a certain moment the apparition seemed different from before. Suddenly, loud yells belched from the Gave had rent the sacred silence of Massabielle. The Gave is the river. So loud yells coming from the river had rent the sacred silence of Massabielle. They challenged, crossed, collided with one another, like the clamor of a brawling crowd. One voice more furious than the rest dominated them all and roared out, "Get out of here! Get out of here!" Well, Bernadette guessed rightly that the threatening curse was by no means addressed merely to her humble self, but was an attack directed beyond her to the vision of light standing above the eglantine. Well, the vision merely glanced in the direction of the rushing stream, and this single look, one of sovereign authority, reduced the invisible mob to silence. The enemy of all good would not drive her from the grotto where she gave her audiences. "He is in a rage, so much the better," the saintly Curé d'Ars used to say of the Grappin. "He lets me know himself when big sinners are coming." Well, Abbé Trochu remarks then, the future was to prove that the spirit of evil in this burst of fury had admitted his defeat. He was not to extinguish the great radiance that would issue from this dark, peaceful nook where so many sinners would renounce sin. Well, there we have the fourth apparition. And now, let us move on to the fifth apparition. Now, in the meantime, people are starting to talk, and word has even got around to the gendarmerie, and the police. The police are aware that something is going on. They're not necessarily worried about it, but they're aware that something is going on, and they're going to check on it. They're going to check it out. Let us look then at the following day. We come to Saturday morning. And on Saturday morning, on her knees, candle in hand, she took out her beads. And her Aunt Basile said, "I also was holding a rosary, but I was distracted on her account." Admitted, her Aunt Basile was with her. Okay, so, "I was also holding a rosary, but I was distracted on her account," admitted a worthy townswoman, Madame Lannes, who had come there with her maid. After a short while her face became all smiles, and the women present said, "Now she sees her." She was looking upward and smiling, and then she became thoughtful and seemed to be listening with great devotion and reverence. And the townswoman said, "I was very close to her, and several times I heard a long breath come through her lips. It was scarcely perceptible, as though she had uttered a very low and prolonged yes. Entirely prejudiced as I was against such things, Rosine Casanave confessed, I could not help marveling at what I saw, the face, the smile, the graceful bows of Bernadette. I was facing her about 2 yards away, recounted Romain Mengalat, and if you had only seen her eyes, it was enough to bring you to tears. Louise Soubirous, Bernadette's mother, said, I can no longer recognize my child. She was deeply moved and wonderstruck. Now they came back to the town afterward at a very leisurely pace, and on her way up the street, the miraculous child found herself the center of even greater curiosity and attention than yesterday. And as she walked along, she confided to those nearest to her that the vision had taught her patiently, word by word, a prayer, which was to be for herself alone, and which she would have to say every day of her life. She recited it at all the apparitions. I say it every day, she declared some 20 years later, and no one except myself knows it. So this prayer was her secret, and people would scheme to wrest it from her, but she would never give it away. What is to be gained then by subtle discussions about the contents of this heavenly dictation? Well, we won't know. We won't know what that prayer was. It is to be kept a secret. But what a wonderful thing. What a wonderful thing that St. Bernadette took that to her grave. A secret prayer taught to her by Her Lady that she said every day for the rest of her life. Now, the gendarmerie has determined that the following day they are going to be there at the grotto to watch and observe what happens. And so what happens the next day? Well, it is the first Sunday of Lent, February 21st, only 10 days since the first apparition, a Sunday destined to prove for little Bernadette most fruitful in surprises. A cold wind was blowing that morning, and when she reached the grotto, accompanied this time by her mother and her Aunt Bernard, there was a considerable crowd gathered there. A number of housewives who were unable to leave their homes on weekdays, women who worked in the fields, and many men, shopkeepers, artisans, slate workers, quarrymen, and laborers, who were free from work on Sundays. What word of command had caused this, the first of Lourdes' crowds to assemble here? Well, it was evident that the clergy, remaining aloof, had nothing whatever to do with this gathering, and no more had the press. The local newspaper was not writing about this. Only the poorer folk were discussing these incidents openly. The middle class were talking about them, but with greater reserve. And those who were in positions of greater status in the town were certainly aware and were talking about it, but they talked about it with a bit more derision. And these were not anti-clerical people. These were religious people. They were respectful of the priest. They might not go to Mass, but they, well, I guess I shouldn't say they were religious people then. They were perhaps Catholic in name, or they were atheists, but nevertheless, they knew what was going on. Let's see here. The movement of the crowd on that Sunday morning was entirely spontaneous. Nobody had told them to go, but people were talking all through these days since the first apparition, and talk increased at the market on the previous Thursday. And so the movement of that crowd was entirely spontaneous. No one instigated it, no one organized it. It was far more than curiosity that mustered them around Massabielle, and in the meadow on the other bank of the Gave. As a witness wrote, everyone in that crowd was convinced of the supernatural character of the grotto incidents. For these worthy folk, the little Subiru girl certainly saw someone kind and lovable. And this someone was, well, already a name of special reverence was being whispered. Bernadette, it is true, had always said until then that the apparition had not yet given her name. Even so, with a thrill of the heart, they hazarded, "Oh, if it were she." There was no hostility in the expectant crowd. Yet, in the gray light of early morning, disquieting figures were detected. First, 3 gendarmes. Several stripes sparkled on the sleeves of the eldest. The major, Renaud the major, was there, supported by the sergeant Biguet from Tarbes and the gendarme Mallet of Lourdes. They were standing about 15 paces from Bernadette, whom they picked out unmistakably in the flittering gleam of her candle. And they were just there doing their job. They didn't cause a stir. There was nothing aggressive in their attitude. They were content merely to watch. They did not interfere. No dispute, no disorder, no incident, no accident. And the 3 gendarmes remained there in silence for possibly a quarter of an hour. Now, there was a fashionably dressed civilian there who attracted more attention than the police, and this was Dr. Dozou. And what was he doing there? He was reputed for his learning and his philanthropy, but he was a man who scarcely ever went to church, except for funerals or official festivals. Why had he come down to Massabielle? Why had he planted himself in that select place right beside Bernadette? Well, not one of those around the child could be aware that the doctor had been priding himself at the club on possessing in Bernadette a neat case of neuropathy. He was going to surprise the young visionary in the middle of her ecstasy at Massabielle itself. No fear of error. Simply by examining her pulse, he would expose both the disorder of her sense perception and the imbalance of her wretched brain. Well, the simple-minded folk frequenting this wild nook would then have no other alternative but to go home. But here is Dr. Dozou in his honest account of an experiment that upset all his calculations. Here's what he has to write. As soon as she was in front of the grotto, Bernadette knelt down, took her rosary out of her pocket, and began to pray, telling her beads. Soon her face underwent a transformation, noticed by everyone near her, and showing that she was in touch with her apparition. And while her beads were moving through her right hand, she held in the other a lighted candle, which was often blown out by the very strong breeze blowing along the Gave. But she handed it each time to the person nearest her to be immediately relighted. I myself was following most attentively all Bernadette's movements in order to study her from more than one aspect, for I wanted to check at that moment the circulation of her blood and her breathing. I took one of her arms and put my fingers on the radial artery. The pulse was calm and regular, the breathing easy. Nothing in the young girl indicated any undue nervous excitement that had reacted in any peculiar way upon the whole system. And after I had let go her arm, Bernadette advanced a short distance toward the top of the grotto, and soon I saw her face, which up to now had expressed the most perfect happiness, grow sad. 2 tears fell from her eyes and rolled down her cheeks. Now, when the mysterious being had disappeared and Bernadette had finished her prayers, thus Dr. Dozou described the end of the ecstasy, and he could not refrain from asking her the reason for these tears after such happy smiles. "The lady," she replied, "took her eyes off me for a moment and gazed into the distance over my head. Then, looking at me again as I had asked her what was making her sad, she said to me, 'Pray to God for sinners.' I was quickly reassured by the expression of kindness and serenity I saw once more on her face, and she straightway disappeared. Well, a day was to come when the visionary of Massabielle would be ceaselessly preoccupied with the conversion of poor sinners. Bernadette, finally, observed the doctor, withdrew in the simplest, most unassuming manner, paying no attention to the public ovation she received. And there we have the fourth, fifth, and sixth apparitions. We'll continue with our story tomorrow. But now let us pray day 3 in our novena. Now you can print out your novena prayers in the description. In the description below the video, there is a link for our website where you can print this out. You can look on our website under Bulletins and click on February 2nd, and you'll see a printout for this. If you print it out double-sided and you give the alignment, or the, what is it called? On the left-hand side short edge, then it'll print out perfectly as a book. You can fold it and staple it in the middle. So today we have the third day. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. With confidence we have recourse to you, Blessed Lady of Lourdes, in our sincere desire to lead a life free from sin. Many times in the past, Christ in his mercy has pardoned us our sins, but many times we have fallen again and offended him anew. It is sin that keeps us from becoming more perfect and Christ-like, because sin injures the life of God's grace in our souls. Blessed Mother, help us to avoid every willful occasion of sin and assist us in times of temptation. We want to have done with sin forever so that we may learn from day to day in the intimate love and friendship of Christ. May we learn to follow your example and rid our hearts of all sinful affections and thus become more securely attached to Jesus. Mary obtained for all poor sinners the grace of conversion so that they may return to the blessed life of sanctifying grace. And now we entreat you once again to make known to your divine Son the graces, both spiritual and material, of which we stand in need, and for which we are praying in this novena. Now, let us call to mind our intentions for this novena, and please do remember to pray for all the sick. Saint Bernadette, obedient child of Jesus and Mary, add your powerful and efficacious prayers to our humble and heartfelt petitions. And now let us pray our hymn of Lourdes. Recalling the nightly Eucharistic processions that happen in Lourdes and the singing and the praying that happens there. And remember to pray your rosary today as well. Ave, Ave, Ave Maria, Ave, Ave, Ave Maria. O Mary, our Mother, we come to this place where you who are sinless appeared full of grace. Ave, Ave, Ave Maria, Ave, Ave, Ave Maria. As Bernadette waited, there came to her sight a radiant lady surrounded by light. Ave, Ave, Ave Maria, Ave, Ave, Ave Maria. She gave her a message, let penance be done, and pray that all sinners may turn to my Son. Ave, Ave, Ave Maria, Ave, Ave, Ave Maria. Well, join us tomorrow for day 4 in our Novena in honor of Our Lady of Lourdes and Saint Bernadette. Please subscribe to this video channel. If you like this video, please like it, share it with a friend, and don't miss a day of prayer with us.